So this is the iPhone 12, Apple's cheapest mainline phone, but don't let that fool you. This thing is still a very capable iPhone. I've used one for ages, so today we're going to talk about my real-world experience using this thing, and also find out whether or not it is worth buying in 2023. Okay, so first of all, quickly, let's talk about the specs. The iPhone 12 is rocking an A14 Bionic processor, 4GB of RAM, and we're going to be talking a little bit more in detail later about how these affect performance. In terms of storage, the iPhone 12 is available with 64, 128, or 256GB of internal storage, which I personally really like, as I usually get the base storage anyway, and most people don't have a use for either the 512GB or a terabyte of internal storage, especially considering how cloud-based everything is nowadays. But it's still nice to know that you can get some flexibility if you play a lot of games. Following this, the iPhone 12 weighs in 164 grams and comes in multiple color options, including black, white, red, green, and blue. And as for specs, that's pretty much it. If you're new here, I prefer to get the specs out of the way as quickly as possible at the start so we can dive right into the real world performance. Also, if you're new here, consider subscribing. It's free, it helps the channel out, and you can always unsubscribe if you change your mind later. Following this, we have the build quality and the button layout. The iPhone 12 was the first of its kind to feature that squared off design, featuring a glass front and back with an aluminium bezel that's now standard on the iPhone line. And not only does it, in my opinion, feel more premium and look more modern, but it's also grippier. I found myself dropping squared off iPhones significantly less than I do rounded off ones, which is cool. The iPhone 12 was also the first iPhone to feature ceramic shield technology on the front screen, which essentially provides, at least according to Apple, up to 4 times better drop resistance than previous iPhones. And in my experience, this has been pretty good. I have broken one iPhone 12, but that was from an impact so hard that the frame bent. Otherwise, it's been pretty flawless. As the iPhone 12 is a modern iPhone, we do get an IP68 water resistance rating in up to 6 meters of water for 30 minutes, which is always good to see. I've got it wet plenty of times, and it's always been fine. Overall, in terms of the build quality, it's pretty much what you'd expect from an iPhone. So nice and premium, but you'll probably want a case for this thing because it is covered in glass despite additional protections. In terms of the button layout, this thing has been standard on the iPhone line since the iPhone 10 with an isolated lock button, a pair of separate volume up and down buttons, and a mute switch. All of the buttons do feel nice and tactile, as is common on aluminium bezel iPhones. It all feels sensibly laid out, and overall, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, in my opinion. It works, and in my opinion, it's become a little bit iconic at this point. So yeah, that's the button layout. Up next, we have the screen, which is an XDR OLED panel with a resolution of 1170 by 2532, and I still think this is a phenomenal panel. It has a typical peak brightness of 625 nits, but due to the fact that it is also an HDR10 certified panel, in this mode, it has a peak brightness of 1200 nits, which is cool. From the moment I started using this display, I've always enjoyed how sharp it's been, with pixels not being visible to my eye, especially at a distance where I'd usually be using it. Of course, it also features True Tone, which is good for keeping colors nice and balanced in all lighting situations, along with haptic touch as a secondary interaction method. This works really nicely on iOS 16, and it just makes getting to those frequently used items just that much faster. It took me a while to warm to haptic touch, to be totally honest, but now that I am actually warm to it, I really like this feature. Overall, the screen on the iPhone 12, in my opinion, really is a standout. It's nice and bright, high resolution, and using it is an absolute pleasure, even in 2023. Following on, we have Face ID, which is still honestly pretty impressive. Basically, as soon as the screen turns on, so long as you kind of angle this thing towards your face, this thing will pick it up and unlock your phone. Of course, we do get those expanded angles that came along with the iPhone 11. It works nicely in all lighting conditions, and overall, in 2023, the Face ID system on the iPhone 12 is still pretty damn good. Now, next up, we have the camera, which is actually my favorite part of the modern smartphone experience. In terms of specs, the main camera is a 12 megapixel standard wide angle with an aperture of f1.6, along with a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera with an aperture of f2.4. There is also a 12 megapixel f2.2 front facing camera, and all of this sounds good, but how do they actually perform? In terms of photos, this thing really is awesome. Colors and contrast all look really nice with good levels of sharpness and a good amount of dynamic range, and overall, at a glance, photos out of this thing look awesome. I did notice a little bit of distortion around the edges of the ultra-wide lens, especially in extreme situations, but in most general situations, you will be fine. Of course, you also get portrait mode here, only on the main lens though, which honestly makes sense because it would be totally pointless on the ultra-wide, and here it works really nicely to get that fake background blur that you typically only get from a big camera like the one I'm filming this video on. You also get night mode on all angles at first for the iPhone line, and while it does work on all angles, it works really well on the wide angle. However, it kind of falls apart on the ultra wide angle. The front facing camera looks good, again with nice colors and dynamic range, with portrait mode working well, night mode being pretty good, and it has enough features to get some nice, good looking creative selfies. Okay, so I think we've established the photos are good on this thing, but what about video? The iPhone 12 shoots 4K video in up to 60 FPS on all angles, along with Dolby Vision HDR in up to 30 FPS, and it looks awesome. It's great for some casual video. I've used it as inserts in my YouTube videos countless times, and while it's certainly not replacing my big camera for smartphone video, this thing is still really good. It also shoots slow motion in 1080p at 240 FPS or 120 FPS on the front-facing camera, and to be honest, it looks nowhere near as good here as it does in the normal 4K mode, but for some fun slow motion, it will definitely get the job done. Overall, while not as advanced as some of the top-of-the-line offerings on iPhone at the moment, the iPhone 12 will still get you some really nice images. I had a lot of fun taking photos and filming videos on this thing, and while I do still personally prefer telephoto over ultra wide any day of the week, for most people, in terms of the camera at least, the iPhone 12 will be absolutely perfect. Okay, so next up we have the most important aspect of the modern smartphone experience: iOS and app performance. As we established in the specs, the iPhone 12 has an A14 Bionic and 4 gigs of RAM. iOS runs like an absolute charm. Scrolling through the OS, opening up stock apps, and performing system functions all go off without a hitch, and because of the iPhone 12's age, it's likely to stay this way for a pretty long time too. In terms of more intensive performance, watching 4K videos on this thing is awesome, partially thanks to that already established gorgeous screen, along with the 5G connectivity that you get with this phone, so everything looks good and the network is smooth, but you also have enough performance to ensure a lag-free experience, which is nice. In terms of gaming, while I personally prefer casual games like Apple Arcade or my favorite mobile game of all time, Coffee Corp, I don't know, I think it's kind of cute. I found gaming to be a nice, smooth experience. Overall, in 2023, performance from the iPhone 12 is actually really good, especially when you consider that this is the cheapest new mainline iPhone. Next up, we have the speakers. To be totally honest, they're modern iPhone speakers, so they get decently loud, but they full sound, and while obviously not going to be as good as a dedicated set of speakers or headphones, that much is definitely clear. For some casual listening while watching videos or cooking, these things are perfect. I've never found myself wanting more quality in these situations, and that's exactly what they're for. So, in my opinion, for phone speakers, these are perfect. Finally, and appropriately last, we have the battery life. The iPhone 12 features a 2815 mAh battery, which can be charged wired, wireless, or with MagSafe, and immediately, I gotta be honest, unless you are a heavy user, you probably won't have any problems. On my average day, I am always able to get through my day with the iPhone 12, which is very nice. I do often have to plug it in during the evenings though to my fast charger, and then I have power for the next day, which is nice, as the battery isn't that huge and the screen is pretty high resolution. While this thing won't be as good as the iPhone 11, you will definitely need to charge it at least once a day. Using this thing in 2023, I was pleasantly surprised actually, and while if you are a heavier user, you probably will need to plug this thing in during the evening. For me, it's been absolutely perfect. Alright, so who should buy this phone in 2023? Well, in my opinion, this phone is perfect for anybody who wants a new iPhone and they want a notched iPhone, so not an iPhone SE, but they don't want to break the bank. As I said, this is Apple's cheapest new mainline iPhone, and I think for the average user in 2023, the iPhone 12 is actually a pretty decent option. Of course, buying a new iPhone, you also get all the benefits of having a new iPhone, such as a brand new battery, an Apple Care, and overall, while power users may want to look for something a little bit more high-end, it's got a crowd-pleasing screen, a crowd-pleasing camera, and overall, still, in 2023, it is an awesome option. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know, by the way, what do you think of the iPhone 12? Do you have one? Do you want one? Are you watching this video on one? Feel free to let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading those. As for now though, as always, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you want to see more content like this, then smash that subscribe button. I'm done for now, and I will see you guys in the next one.